podcast time here. Now, today's podcast episode, I want to talk, it's going to be part 3 of lies that we tell young people. It's one of the mini series that I really like here on this podcast episode for numerous reasons. A lot of us older folks, we should take a nice long look in the mirror. There are a lot of problems today from an economic perspective, from a cultural perspective, from what Scott Galloway calls the breakdown of the social compact, which I certainly I agree with him on that. Us older folks should take a nice long look in the mirror. You know, we do a lot of enabling. We do a lot of finger pointing. We often are the ones who bring up these generational differences. It's usually us who are less empathetic with young people and the challenges that they face today, and that we bring these talking points that we're so used to handing out, so used to dishing out, when the time frame that a lot of these younger people are in is different. Case in point, a lot of us older folks, and you certainly got to be older than me to remember this, but a lot of older folks can remember that when I just needed to work hard and I could have some money and I could pay for a house and I could make it on one income and my kids could do this, et cetera, et cetera. You just got to work hard. That's not the case for a lot of people anymore. You have to be very intentional and do a lot of data work and understand a lot more now today. The middle class income, the share of middle class income has dwindled by at least 10 percentage points in comparison to, let's say, the late 60s to today. That doesn't sound like much, but it's significant when you compare what you could do. What was the housing cost 40, 50, 60 years ago in comparison to today, and the wages and the stagnation of the wages. You know, the fact that workers' wages have effectively been stagnant for most of my working career, and certainly somebody who's younger, and the purchasing power of that plays a lot into whether or not you can sit here and just say, well, work hard. What happens in a lot of us older folks are less empathetic than we really should be. And we sit here and we say these platitudes. We talk about things as if we understand the complexity of it today, when we really don't in a lot of ways. We don't understand the challenges that a lot of young people are having to effectively face, nor do we really acknowledge the fact that we're, like Scott Galloway talks about as well, we're borrowing money from younger people. We're spending their money today, and it's on them to pay it back tomorrow. And so this is just but a few of the things that I like to sit here and talk about. Older folks need to really take a nice long look in the mirror and say, I am part of the problem as well. And when we do that, we can begin to bridge. We can begin to bridge this gulf between younger people. And one of the it's a natural recourse to what's taking place here. But because it's these lies that we tell young people, and they're just kind of, some of them we're intentional about telling lies, and some of them are just baked in culturally. But when you go to tell a younger person something that actually has significant importance on their life and the trajectory of their life and what's going on here, they are less likely to listen to you or to take you seriously. And why should they? Because many of the lies, you can go back and listen to part 1 and part 2 for more. But many of the lies that we have told young people, in effect, have been culturally embedded to where many, many young people have fallen victim to it. Because, quite frankly, they're around older people. And those older people are supposed to have young people's best intention at heart, right? You're supposed to want the best for the young person in your family. And you might have pushed off the responsibility of teaching certain subjects or the skill of critically thinking about something to what you believe should happen, somebody in school or whatever. And instead, You've just shirked your responsibility. Somebody in the school system who does not have your kid's best intention at heart. And they've, in this instance, I'll give you one example. They pipeline fed them to university or a college and said, you got to go to college to get a good job. You, as a parent or an older person who is supposed to have their best interest, you bit down on the narrative as well. And now they're economic slaves because they have an enormous amount of money that they have to pay back. And they're starting off their, what I would say is journey into adulthood. So why would they listen to you now? That's just one example, but that's the reality. So with that in mind about what's going on, let's get into lies that we tell young people, part 3. I'm sure that if you've got some more lies, you can drop them in the comments or you can email me. You can go to the contact page on the website, thewealthyironworker.com, and send them to me and we'll get into it. All right. Lie number 1. The culture is looking out for you. The market, you could swap culture out with market if you wanted to, but it's going to be looking out for you. Culture is looking out for you. No, it's not. It's whoever has the loudest megaphone that they're looking out for themselves. So the culture then is not looking out, and you could compartmentalize the culture if you wanted to. You could sit and say the culture is in effect the university system or that part of culture. It is not looking out for you. I'm going to teach you some stuff, but what I'm really looking out for is this business model, if you will. This business model over here is looking to be and continue to be self-sustaining. What do I need? I need more people into this. So the pipeline then needs to be fed. So I need to continue and perpetuate the narrative that you got to go to college to get a good job. This is just what you do. In other words, you graduate high school and you're coming to college. That's where the guidance counselors and the adults who have influence into young people's lives continually barrage them. I have had up to this point now 4 apprentices in the Apprentice Spotlight series, and a couple of them have specifically told me, first off, every single one of them told me that that was the message they heard. You got to go to college to get a good job. And a couple of them were very specific in that when they first brought up wanting to go into a trade, the guidance counselor said, we'll talk. This is like at junior year, maybe. They'll kick the can down the road because they want to see if it's the same thing. They want to dissuade you from going that way. Why? Because it's not part of the cultural narrative. Again, culture is not looking out for you. It's the same thing when you go and let's say you're going to apply for a credit card. Many of you young people have probably not even been taught the basic financial system and setup and the dangers of debt. And it's likely that your parents didn't teach you because they themselves fell victim and prey to significant amounts of debt too. So it's very hard then to teach what you don't know. When you go to apply for a credit card, do you think they're looking out for you and they're going to give you the lowest interest rate? Or is that part of culture going to be looking out for them? The question is rhetorical. You already know the answer. They are looking out for their piece of the pie and themselves, not you. You go to get a car. Are they looking out for you to give you the absolute best rate, or is it on you to try and get the best financed rate possible? And this also applies to every single bit that you're going to encounter from a cultural perspective. When you compartmentalize it like that, you can understand that they are not looking out for you. They are looking out for themselves. They're looking out for their industry. They're looking out for their discipline. They're looking out for them and the money that they can make, not your best interest. And the reason I bring this up is not to make you young people go, well, I shouldn't listen to anything older people say. That's not what I'm advocating for, because then why would I put this podcast episode together? What I am trying to help you understand and to develop then is your critical thinking skills. Don't go in blindly. and recognize that as from a cultural perspective, they're not really looking out for your best interests. When you do that, you're being shrewd, is a proper use of the word. And that, my friends, is helpful. That's lie number one, that culture is looking out for you. Lie number two, you can't do anything, you're damaged. This is where I'm going to be slinging some mud at a lot of older folks. Whether or not you agree with this book that I'm going to bring out or not, you can certainly, you might want to read it first before you dismiss it outright. But I read a very interesting book by Abigail Schreier, and she was talking about bad therapy and how there's a word called rumination. And so what happens with rumination is that you continually, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, continually focus on something. And when you ruminate and continually focus on something, what happens is, more often than not, it's a downward spiral. Rather than looking at ways to achieve something or get out of something or deal with something, continuing to ruminate then has a negative problem. And this is where I point the finger to a lot of adults. And I can certainly back it up with data that a lot of older people should take a nice long look in the mirror. Because some of this goes into, well, how are you raised? Point blank, how are you raised? Or let me rephrase that to put the blame or the responsibility on the shoulder of us older folks. Who raised you and how did they raise you? If they told you that you can't do anything or that you're damaged or that you can't overcome certain things, when many of the things that you're being told that you can't do, you actually can. You need to build resiliency and climb your way out and do some stuff, face some hard stuff. It's good for your character. But you've probably been told, this doesn't apply to every young person, but this is one of those lies that a larger portion, or at least a significant number of young people have likely been told throughout their life, and it could have been intentional or unintentional on the part of their parents. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's unintentional. If it still happened, guess who's still responsible? You are. Simple as that. I didn't take that situation and put it to something else. I didn't intentionally try to spend all my money. Now I don't have any money to pay my bills. Am I still responsible for them? Yeah. So if you told young people then, you can't do that because of X, Y, or Z, you handicapped them from the jump, are you still responsible even though it wasn't intentional? Absolutely. So young person listening to this, when we start talking about you can't do anything or you can't do X, Y, or Z because of X, Y, ABC, then the reality is, I'm not saying that this isn't applicable in every single instance. I'm saying it is said to far too many young people, you can't do this because of this. And you can personalize this. Somebody told me I couldn't do this because of this. But you're just as likely to run into somebody who is doing this despite this. So personalize that and understand that, no, it's not that you can't do anything that you're damaged. You can do a lot more than what a lot of older people have told you. And this includes professionals in specific situations and settings that handicap you from the get-go. So there it is. When someone says you can't do anything, I think I would rather be told that I can do a lot more than I can't do something. That's lie number two that is unfortunately told to too many young people. Lie number three, you are special. Listen, I've got 4 kids. I've got one that's an adult, and I've got 3 kids that are, below, they're not even teens yet. They're special to me. They're irreplaceable to me. And that's certainly the case. They are special. But what I mean is that we don't prepare our young people to enter into the workforce or enter into culture at large by letting them know that, yes, you're special to me, but there are 6 billion other people on this planet that you are not special to. And that might seem harsh to you, but that's the reality. And it's unfortunate because we ought to be intrinsically valuable because of our humanity. The reality is most people don't care. You're a number, etc. Now, I don't mean for that to define you, right? I don't mean for the fact that you're not special to 6 billion people to define you. I want to set you on the proper path. When you go into culture and you realize that, yes, indeed, you are a number to a lot of places you're going to go work. If you're working for a large corporation or a company, they're going to look to replace you the second that you're not there, etc. You have a head on your shoulders then, and you understand more than most that, yes, I'm a number. Why then do I put what I'm doing for a living and everything else above all the people who really care for me and who believe that I'm special? My family, for instance. Why do I do that? And you're not in for like this rude awakening because you were told that you're special, and we didn't make a distinction between you are special to me, you are special to your extended family, you're irreplaceable to us. But that's where it stops. And let's be real for a second, that when we go into culture, when we go into the workforce, there will be people who do not care at all. As a matter of fact, you are in their way. You are a tool that they will like to use. And when you are dull, they will throw you away. It's a culture shock for a lot of young people who grew up thinking that they're special, that they can then go into the workforce and everybody else is going to treat you as special. They're not going to. I'm telling you that right now. I want to help you out. I want to make sure that you understand this, that yes, you are special to somebody. Hopefully. Hopefully you have family that you are special to. But that's where it stops. And the sooner you understand that, and that when you enter into culture, this doesn't mean that people get to treat you any old way. That's not what I'm saying. But the reality is you're not special to them. And because you're not special to them, you have to consistently pay attention and use your critical thinking skills, or if you don't have them, to develop them so that you're not taken advantage of because you entered into this thinking that you were special and people were going to treat you as such. It's not true. I just want to set the stage for you. That's lie number 3. Lie number 4. When you grow up, you can do whatever you want to. This is a lie. Now, this is one of those well-intentioned lies that many of us adults, we tell people. And while I don't have, I haven't gone out and interviewed a massive number of people to put my finger on the pulse of why we tell this lie, I believe I know why. I believe that we want our kids to dream. I believe young people, we want you to dream. We want you to think that you can do all kinds of stuff. And this sounds very strange, right? Coming after lie number 2, you can't do this because you're damaged. But that is more of a therapy perspective, you just because you're physically capped, you can't do this or whatever the case may be. This is something that we tell young people intentionally because we want you to dream and we want you to do this or do that or whatever. And it's just not true. I mean, statistically speaking, if we have, and I'll just make the number up, but if we have 60 million adolescents in the country a year, how many of them can become president? How many of them, if we're going to extrapolate this to what you really see happening in culture today, how many of them are going to become professional athletes or are going to become musicians or will go on to be actors or actresses? When you tell people this right here, and you never really deviate from it and help them develop what I would say are specific reality checks as they're getting ready to enter into adulthood, what you are effectively doing is setting that young person up for failure. It is not true that you can do whatever you want to do. And this is, I might add, a first world problem. There are millions of people in this country today who do a job that they don't care to do because it provides for their family and pays the bills. There are people in developing countries, in third world, as they are so often called, that don't even have a choice to begin with. The fact that we even have choices is a first world phenomenon, and we can't just do whatever we want. We can't just do whatever we want to do. That's not the reality. The reality is when you grow up, and this is a plug for passion versus opportunity here, one of the talking points that I routinely discuss here, it's not about what you're passionate. It's about where the opportunity is. And so when you operate, young person and adults who tell young people this, when you operate this way and you tell that young person you can do anything you want to do, you often, from a statistical perspective, are running under false assumptions, false hope. And to some people, it's not as big of a rude awakening as it is to others. Some people get the wind knocked out of their sails when they realize that they've grown up believing this particular lie. When instead, what we should be telling young people is you can do what you want to do realistically in a hobby situation. But when it comes to what you're going to do to support yourself for the rest of your life, let's look at what opportunity is available. Use the time, the extra time you have after doing that to really evaluate what other opportunities there are, wherever your passions happen to be, and let's develop them in a hobby perspective. And then if you can turn that into what I would say is an income, great. But to tell millions of young people that you can do whatever you want to do, we're lying to them, and we intuitively know that we're lying. So young person, it's a lie. And last but not least, you are just one person. What can you do? This is a self-defeatist attitude that is extremely common. It's an extremely common talking point, but it's also something that you'll hear a lot of older people talk to you. Because when you're young, you do a lot of dreaming. You do a lot of, I can solve problems. This is what it's like baked into youth in general. You want to try and solve problems. You want to do different things. You've got more energy than a lot of us older people, and us older people know this to be true. And so your thought is, well, we can just do this. We can do this. What if we organize this? What if we organize that? What if we did this? What if we used our energy and our ideas to put it out? And some old person comes along and says, you're just one person. What can you do? I'll tell you what, you can do a lot. You can do a lot. I'll give you an example. Here recently, I took a plane ride. Now, I knew about this story beforehand, but I was on a plane and there was a movie that's called One Life. And it stars Anthony Hopkins. And it talks about a true story where before World War II began, there was one young man that felt the need to do more. And what he did was when he went over into Eastern Europe, where tensions were heightened because of what the Nazis were doing, there was a lot of poor people and there was a lot of young people, and they were having difficulty. And what he effectively did was he came back. He was only over there for like a week, and he came back home, and he's a young person. He comes back home and he goes and works after hours after his job. And he's using a lot of his energy to sit here and basically arrange for families to adopt these young people that are going to escape Eastern Europe and the poverty that's set in over there because of what the Nazis have been doing. And many of these young kids never saw their parents again, but they escaped death. And I think it was over 600 children. This guy had other young people working with him, but he had the idea. He had the energy. He had the audacity, if I may, to actively go through and arrange all of this stuff together so that these kids could come over on visas, get adopted by these many of these families, and many of them never went back. They stayed right there. You never know what your one person can do. And I might say this too. This is something, for the most part anyway, this is an older person telling young people that you're just a young person. What can you do? You're just one person. What can you do? A lot of older people, when they get older, they become negative in their perspectives and negative in their perceptions. Not everyone, but a significant number do, to the point that they can sit here and tell you, young person, full of energy, full of life, full of what I would say is vibrancy, and they'll tell you, you're just one person. What can you do? One person can do a lot. One person can change the trajectory for a lot of people. They can change the trajectory of an industry. One person can change the trajectory of a country sometimes. Never discount yourself just because you're young, just because you're one person, because you got energy. You can change it. Now, I would caution you and say, be careful. Be sure to do your research, right, about whatever it is that you're getting involved in and whatnot. But the lie that I'm specifically addressing here is that you are just one person. What can you do? One person, whether you're young or old for that matter, can do a lot. You can do a lot. So the 5 lies that we've talked about here today, culture is looking out for you. That's not true. Enter culture with and the word of the day is going to be critical thinking here when we look at these, but culture is looking out for you. No, that's not true. You can't do anything, you're damaged. Some of you have probably heard this, and some of you probably need to realize that this was a lie. It might have been intentional or well-intentioned to what I would say is ease the amount of work that you've got or whatever the case may be. But sometimes, let me be blunt here, sometimes there's nothing wrong with hard work and adversity. It helps to build character. Lie number 3, you are special. Yes, you are special. You are special to somebody or a lot of people, hopefully. But you're not special to the world. And that, when you understand the proper connection there and you utilize your discernment and your critical thinking skills, you enter into the workforce and you're less likely to be taken advantage of and you're less likely to be exploited because you have a proper understanding about the way others view you. Lie number 4, when you grow up, you can do whatever you want to do. That's certainly not the case. Just statistically speaking, it's not the case. You can't have 50 million kids that want to either be professional sports players or actors or actresses. There are far better off for the advice for you to look at where opportunity is instead of just trying to follow your passions for career perspectives. You can't do whatever you want to do. It's not true, right? And lie number 5, you are just one person. What can you do? Far better off for you to harness your energy and ideas and things of that nature to make substantive change, but don't get bogged down in what's often given from a pessimistic perspective that you are just one person. What can you do? There's a lot one person can do. And I only gave you one example. There are numerous examples of what one person can do. One person can do an awful lot, especially when that optimism can be infectious and other people is contagious and other people are brought in and that energy feeds off one another to accomplish great things. So those are the 5 lies in Lies We Tell Young People Part 3 that we looked at. And hopefully I'm building this series up to where you can begin to address them, whether you're old and understand that we have been complicit in a lot of these lies ourselves, or if you're a young person, go, what he's saying is right. And I need to pay more attention to what I'm being told or what I blanketly believe. Lies We Tell Young People, Episode 3. I'll see you on the next one.